I had a lot of leadership responsibility from I was pretty young in the oil industry, working offshore. But it took me a long time before I truly understood my impact on culture as a leader and how leadership drives culture. And at that time I was a supervisor, much. But in 1993 I learned it the hard way. At that time I was the platform manager at the Oseberg Field Center, and that year we were going to carry out the first major maintenance stop at the Oseberg Field Center. And what we had was a package with approved jobs, risk evaluated, of course, in addition from the land organization. And that was my job, to execute those jobs, of course, together with my organization in a safe manner. I was not allowed to add jobs to that approved package. But then what we found a few days before the maintenance stop was that we had forgotten simply a job, which was not a big job, but it was very important to execute it in the maintenance stop, because otherwise we had to stop the Oseberg Field Center later with enormous consequences for the production, of course. So what we did, we in the management team, we tried to find out if we could take this job into the package and do it safe. But I was very uncertain, and we were sitting for hours evaluating the risk with the job, and I was still uncertain, but of course I felt I was pressured from people around me and myself, as far as, okay, it's too dumb not to do the job now, because then we have to do the job later and shut down the production on the Oseberg Field Center. So finally, even if I was not certain, I decided to do the job, and I signed a work permit. And they started to work on the night shift, and at 7 o'clock the next day I got the bill for that decision. The alarm bells went off, and I understood that we had a fatality on the platform. So I went straight out to the site where it had happened, and I found a man on the floor, and for me he was dead. For me he was dead, but he was not. They saved him, thank God. We got him on a helicopter and finally to Haukeland, the hospital in Bergen. What I did the same day as this happened was to having a kind of a meeting with myself. And in that meeting I told myself that, Stig, if you want to be a platform manager in the future with responsibility for hundreds of people, you have to do something with your leadership. You have to do something with being much more consistent in your leadership. And at the same time, I made myself a promise. From this day till I leave a platform for the last time, there should be no incidents on my shift. And I managed it, except one little minor incident. And that was not only because of me, but of course my entire organization on board as a team. But I think because I started to be much more consistent, I was training on that every day in order to be much more consistent, contributed to that result, because I started to build culture in an opposite direction than what I had done through my decision the fatal day. Because what I did the fatal day was to make a decision where I compromised on safety. I compromised on safety. But and what I didn't realize was that, okay, when I do that, it doesn't only influence this particular job, but when I'm sitting in front of my management team and compromising on safety in this way, I create culture, because that kind of decision making where people are thinking that, okay, when Stig is in charge and on board, compromising on safety is okay. And that kind of culture and behavior from my side spread downwards in the organization in time, all the way to the sharp end. And that is a dramatic learning from my side. So what I did, I decided to be much more consistent. And the one reason why I became, I think, more consistent was because I, of course, I didn't want to take people's life. But on the other hand, this man who survived, he called me from time to time, and he started all the telephone calls this way: Stig, I'm calling you to tell you that I am still alive, but my life is ruined. And it was. So of course that made me conscious about, again, how important it is to be consistent and understanding that my leadership creates and drives culture. So I compromised. So I decided from now on to be uncompromising. And when I was good in my training, becoming uncompromising, I sometimes drove people both inland and offshore crazy, because I stopped jobs which I didn't like. But what happened was that when I stopped jobs, people around me who owned these tasks, they became extremely creative. And finally, they ended up with a new plan for the job, which was much better, both as far as safety was concerned and quality was concerned, than what it was before I stopped it. So what I'm trying to say is that what I experienced was that how behavior from a leader creates culture, and in the first situation, through my decision, I created a culture which, of course, is the opposite of a sustainable culture. And finally, when I was good and conscious about this, I created, hopefully, a sustainable culture because of my uncompromising approach, which led to this creativity around me from the task owners when I did it, even if they first thought that I was more or less crazy doing this kind of uncompromising acts.